High in the mountains of Svaneti in northern Georgia, the outside world fades away. The only connection to the rest of the country, a snaking mountain road that heads back down to the lowlands. The region feels otherworldly and is dotted with centuries-old Svan towers, defensive houses that the Svan people used to use for protection all the way up until the late 1990s. That's because blood feuds, a traditional attitude to vengeance best summed up by a life for a life, meant conflicts here were common between neighbours and villagers until then. But a lot of the towers are still occupied. And, away from the roads, many locals still use horses to get around. Like the icefalls I passed clinging to mountainsides, Svaneti feels frozen in time. It's easy to forget that places this isolated still exist. A 60-kilometre, 5-day trek here was truly stunning. But with no Wi-Fi and no phone service, there was no way of knowing what was happening outside of these mountains. At least until I caught a dilapidated, beaten-up minibus out of them to pick up my bike. But it turns out that all that tranquility stood in stark contrast with what was unfolding in the capital, some 100 kilometers away.
I am in the middle of nowhere and I have a puncture. The hole is here and I don't know that I don't think I can put a patch on that. Man, this really sucks. Oh man, thank you very much. That's awesome. I've got it right now, thank you. Wow. Thank you. Yeah. Bye bye. So, as you can tell, I'm getting a ride in the back of a truck here. Basically, the police stopped. The Georgian police stopped to check on me. I told them what happened, and they flagged down this truck. I guess this thing is usually meant to hold cattle or something.
After being saved by Georgian hospitality,
Bye-bye.
I fixed up my bike before continuing on to Tbilisi.
Getting there. Oh no, you can't really see it, but that pillar is the sign to Tbilisi. I'm in Tbilisi! Finally!
But as I cycled into the nation's capital, the city was angry.
For those who don't pay attention to Georgian politics, there's been quite a lot of protests happening in Georgia at the moment, demanding the resignation of this guy called Abkhazia. I just went down to see one. And they're dying down a bit at the moment, but they might get bigger again as they progress. So every night it all kind of kicks off here until this guy, Abkhazia, resigns. Things are a lot more tense than they were the other day down here, and the police have completely blocked off the road. I think they're expecting some kind of confrontation. But yeah, behind me, the whole row of police that have blocked the road.
Hundreds of police crammed into the main square. Thousands of protesters faced off against them, and the air simmered with such tension you could almost touch it.
We're kind of in the middle of the protesters here and the police there, so I don't know how much longer we're going to stick around.
But why? Why was a normally peaceful city suddenly enveloped with unrest? Why here, and why now? The answer is, unsurprisingly, complicated. So let's take a few steps back.
So a lot of you might not recognize that flag. It's the Georgian flag, not the state in the US, but the country in the Caucasus.
So where are the Caucasus? They're here, in a not quite Europe, not quite Asia part of the world, wedged between Turkey, Russia and Iran. Georgia is very diverse, with several regions that have distinct ethnic and cultural identities.
It's a traditional job and today this man is getting married, so congratulations and good luck. Thank you very much.
A few of them, like Svaneti, even have their own languages. Now, most of these groups live in harmony with the others, with two exceptions. In Abkhazia in 1992 and South Ossetia in 2008, conflicts broke out between separatists pushing for independence and Georgian forces. The thing is, with the backing of Russia, the separatists won. Now, while the vast majority of countries recognize Abkhazia and South Ossetia as part of Georgia, Russia, along with a handful of other nations, has recognized them as independent states and continues to protect them. Since Russia integrated the Abkhaz and South Ossetia militaries into its own, to many Georgians, 20% of their land is currently occupied by their northern neighbour. On top of the countless casualties, one of the many tragedies from all this is the 300,000 civilians who were forced to leave everything behind and flee their homes. Many found empty rooms in old abandoned Soviet facilities like sanatoriums in Georgia, and have stayed there ever since. I was able to meet some of them, like Adele here, and see their quote-unquote temporary accommodation. I say it that way because she, along with her neighbours, has been stuck here in limbo and waiting for a chance to return home for 28 years. And to be honest, there's no end in sight. So back to Tbilisi. How does this link to the protests? Well, because of all that, most Georgians don't exactly consider Russia to be a good friend. To learn a bit more, I met up with Nino, a peace builder who facilitates talks and peaceful engagement between those on opposing sides of the conflicts.
In Georgian parliament, a couple of days ago, they invited the Russian Communist Party member who is in the parliament in Russia, and he sat in the chair of the speaker of the parliament. And for Georgians it was very symbolic. We are so much fighting against Russian occupation, against the Russian imperialism, let's say, in general, and Georgians found it very unfair and very disrespectful, so they started to protest. So the speaker of the parliament resigned, the person who organized this summit resigned, then they were asking for the proportional elections for the next parliament elections, and they received it. So now the very last demand is to resign the Minister of Internal Affairs. Why? Because on the first day of the protest, the police appeared and they were shooting with the bullets. How you call it? Rubber? Okay, I think that's it. And then one girl, she lost her eye. Nobody died, but they were injured. So people believe that the police should not exceed their power and should not overreact.
So in short, people were protesting against Russian occupation and police brutality, and they took to the main square outside Parliament every day for months in 2019 and 2020. The eye patches you might have noticed some of the protesters wearing are to show solidarity with those that were injured. This story has been forgotten by much of the world. People visit Georgia for its beauty. For its delicious cuisine and the infamous hospitality of people here. But this side of Georgia, the wounds still healing from two devastating conflicts, is harder to spot. It's easy to drive right past the settlements of displaced people without even knowing they're there. But there are many, many more people like Adele, and their fate remains uncertain. The protests were successful in forcing some changes, and a few officials did resign, but Ghacharia did not. In fact, he subsequently went on to become Georgia's prime minister. So, in the near future at least, whatever happens next will be largely in the hands of him and his party. Georgian Dream.